says Northern Light Blue Hill Hospital was not in substantial compliance with requirements when inspectors concluded their work in July. Bangor Daily News reports the hospital has submitted a plan to correct the problems. The report also states unsanitary dish conditions were present. That issue is listed as having been corrected in August. The Blue Hill Hospital is a 25-bed critical access facility. A new report assessing policies that promote LGBTQ equality finds communities in Maine scored below the national average. The Municipal Equality Index is compiled by the Washington, D.C.-based Human Rights Campaign. Among the assessed criteria are non-discrimination laws, contractor non-discrimination policies, and municipal employee domestic partner benefits. The 9 Maine cities and towns surveyed averaged 53 out of a possible 100 points. The national average is 60. In sports, the Bruins beat the New Jersey Devils 5-1. Forecast calling for lingering cloudiness today. A chance of some rain across southern parts of the state this afternoon. Maybe snow showers in the far north. Temperatures will stay in the 30s statewide today. Some sunshine is in the forecast for tomorrow. I'm Erwin Gratz, Maine Public Radio News.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Drexel University, recognizing 100 years of a cooperative education program that prepares students to address the challenges of a changing world. More at drexel.edu/ambitioncan'twait. And from Viking, dedicated to bringing the traveler closer to the destination by river and by sea, offering a small ship experience with a shore excursion included in every port. Learn more at vikingcruises.com.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Noelle King.
I'm Rachel Martin.
And I'm David Green. The author Clifford Thompson has spent a lot of time thinking about identity.
As a young man, I kind of struggled with how do you as a black person kind of fit yourself into American society? Yeah, for most of us, America is the only home we've ever known. On the other hand, America has such a history of oppression of people of color. So where do you fit yourself into that picture?
He often thinks about his place in America, and he says for him, the 2016 election brought on a new period of reflection. He did not vote for President Trump. Actually, he rarely meets people who did. Maybe you can relate to Thompson, maybe not. But no doubt this is a divisive time in our country, a time when many people with views for or against this president have trouble understanding the other side.
There are a lot of stories of liberals, going to Thanksgiving dinner and their uncle is there who's a Trump supporter, and they either have an argument or they avoid the subject of politics altogether. As a black person, my circle tends not to include a lot of conservative Republicans. So it's not that I think Trump supporters are space aliens or anything like that. It's just that in the normal course of things, I tend not to have lengthy conversations with them. So I decided that maybe it was time to do that.
And that is exactly what he did. To understand his country and himself, he sought out people who support President Trump. Now, to be clear, he wasn't trying for a representative sample of Trump voters. He only wrote about several of them, all of them white men. He also wasn't trying to draw any sweeping conclusion about our country. This was a very personal journey that he writes about in his new book, What It Is.
So, when Donald Trump was elected, it came out that the majority of white voters in the country supported him. So, if you are a black person who has always kind of founded your beliefs on the notion that you should not be prejudiced, that you should not judge people according to skin color, but the majority of whites in the country have supported a man who received the endorsement of the Ku Klux Klan, where does that leave you? And so, for the first time in my life, I felt the sort of foundational personal beliefs of mine to be challenged in a major way. And so it became a matter of figuring out how to go forward with this challenge.
And you decided as part of going forward that you wanted to meet and listen to some voters who supported Donald Trump. How did you reach that decision?
I wanted to talk to Trump supporters just to try to get a sense of what exactly I certainly can't talk to all Trump supporters, and There's some I don't want to talk to, but I wanted to get a sense of what some of them were thinking, so that I could then.
I'll be right back, guys. I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee. Be right back.
Why so many people who supported this man.
Well, and some of your conversations that you write about in the book, I mean, they were captivating, and we should say, I think you gave them different names to protect their identities, right? So there was a guy you called Bob, who you spent some time with. Tell me a little bit about him, so our listeners know.
Sure. Bob is a Californian. He's white. He's in his 70s. He's a retired California highway patrolman. And so he welcomed me into his home. We started talking about his upbringing, his career, and I asked him questions about race. And almost out of the blue at one point, he remembered an experience he had in the early 1970s when he was a patrolman. And he said, this isn't nice. Do you want to hear it? And I said, yes, I do. So he proceeded to tell me what it was.
So Bob is sitting there and recounts a time that he used the N-word, and he tells you about this. Right. I mean, how did you react to that?
I admired him for sharing that story with me because he certainly didn't have to, and he knew that it would not make him look good.
All right, we're starting the sequence over on player. Let's go.
This was not a good thing to have done. And he very much identifies himself as somebody who is not racist, who does not make judgments on the basis of race. At the same time, as became clear in our conversation, as became clear to me, he would say things that indicated to me, if not to him, sort of negative attitudes toward black people. So, on the one hand, he identifies as somebody who is not racist. On the other hand, I think he has beliefs that I don't even think that he's aware of having, which are negative about people of color.
I guess it's important to point out, I mean, obviously these were just a couple conversations, and my colleagues and I have interviewed a lot of people who supported President Trump who might have had similarities to these guys or might not. I want to focus more on you and what did you get out of this and these conversations?
One notion I came away with is that, and this sort of transcends the time that we're in and transcends Trump's election and everything, is that I think most people are decent, a lot of people are not, but even at a level below that, people are selfish, and they tend to do things in support of their interests or what they think their interests are. And that's how people have to be. And so when it comes to Trump's election, I think people vote for him for a variety of reasons. Maybe you voted for him because you think he's going to bring back coal mining jobs. And the flip side of that is a certain indifference to the concerns of other people. And I think indifference is, I think it can't be underestimated as a factor in what's going on now.
Do you feel like you've changed going through this project?
I still maintain my beliefs in, one, calling myself an American, and two, judging people if I have to judge them as individuals. What's changed, I think, is my sympathy for people of color who just can't get there. But I choose to maintain this rootedness that I have in not being prejudiced and in identifying as an American.
Clifford Thompson, a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Clifford Thompson. His new book is called What It Is. We appreciate you listening to the program this morning on your public radio station. And stay in touch throughout the day. You can find us on social media. Visit the Morning Edition Facebook page. And we are all over Twitter. You can find me at NPR Green. Noel King is at Noel King. Rachel Martin is at Rachel NPR. And Steve Inskeep is at NPR Inskeep. This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm David Green.
I'm Rachel Martin. And I'm Noel King.
And you're listening to Morning Edition on listener-supported Maine Public Radio. By the way, you can follow us on Twitter at Maine Public or on Facebook.com/Maine Public.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from the Langloff Foundation, supporting justice, equity, and opportunity for all people to foster and sustain safe and healthy communities. Learn more at langloff.org. From the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, guided by the belief that the arts and humanities are essential to the well-being of diverse and democratic societies. Learn more at mellon.org. And from the ECMC Foundation at ecmcfoundation.org.
From the Top is coming back to Maine. Portland Ovations is bringing From the Top to Merrill Auditorium in Portland this evening. From the Top is a celebration of outstanding, talented young musicians from Maine and beyond, broadcast each Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock on Maine Public Classical. As a Maine Public member, you'll receive a special discount on ticket prices. If you'd like to know more, just go to our website, mainepublic.org, and click on Events.
Good morning from the BBC in London. I'm Pete Ross at BBC Topline. Some of our top global stories this hour. A former employee at Britain's consulate in Hong Kong says he was tortured after being detained on a trip to mainland China. Simon Cheng told the BBC he was accused by the Chinese of inciting political unrest in Hong Kong and then shackled, blindfolded and held in stress positions. His testimony triggered this reaction from Britain's Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab.
I summoned the Chinese ambassador to see me, and we've made clear not only that this is outrageous and disgraceful behaviour, but also that we expect the Chinese authorities to review and to hold to account those responsible.
Elsewhere, Russia has condemned a series of Israeli airstrikes on dozens of targets in Syria belonging to the Syrian government, a Russian ally. The Kremlin said the attacks from Israel were completely against international law. Analysts say Russia's reaction is unusual, as it usually turns a blind eye to such raids.
Israel has carried out hundreds of air and missile strikes on targets linked to Iran in Syrian territory, but this was one of the broadest attacks to date. Unusually, the Israelis not only publicly confirmed the operation, but sent out a map of the sites they hit.
Barbara Plett-Usher in Jerusalem. And Pope Francis has arrived in Thailand at the start of a week-long visit to Asia. It's the first papal trip to Thailand in 35 years and coincides with the 350th anniversary of the first papal visit to Siam, the name Thailand used to be known by. In London, I'm Pete Ross at the BBC.
And I'm Erwin Grant. Maine Public Radio News, good morning. As we mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, From the Top will record 2 shows in Portland's Merrill Auditorium this evening. 3 of the 10 musicians who will perform are Mainers. They are violinist Joshua Rosenthal of Damascata, who's 16, soprano Annabelle Parker of Rockport, who's 17, and violinist Colin Aponte from Blue Hill, who's 15. The recorded programs are to air on Maine Public Classical on Saturdays, December 21st and January 11th. Governor Mills has announced the appointment of Judy East as Executive Director of the Land Use Planning Commission. East is from Washington County, where she worked for the Washington County Council of Governments. The commission handles land use matters in the state's unorganized territories. That includes about half of Maine's entire land area. And they're both natives of Caribou, and yesterday Maine Senator Susan Collins and astronaut Jessica Meir had a phone chat. Collins was on the ground, Meir in orbit aboard the International Space Station. Collins says they talked about conditions aboard the station, Meir's research with mice from the Jackson Lab in Maine, and Meir's efforts to grow mustard greens. You're listening to Morning Edition on Maine Public Radio. Good morning to you on this Wednesday. The time is 8:46, and we'll check out the weather forecast a little less than 6 minutes from now. Changes could come soon to the system that delivers free legal services to poor people in Maine facing criminal prosecution. That system is under new scrutiny, for lax oversight of the billing practices by the private attorneys the state commissions to defend low-income clients. And there's a scathing report released in April that details significant shortcomings that could affect the quality of that legal representation. As Steve Misler reports, a quick overhaul of the system may be necessary to avoid a costly lawsuit.
A landmark 1963 U.S. Supreme Court decision required all states to provide an attorney to poor people unable to afford their own lawyer. 49 states now meet that requirement through some version of a public defender's office and a staff of attorneys. Maine is the only state that hires and assigns private attorneys to what are known as indigent cases. But a report released in April by the nonpartisan Sixth Amendment Center found that the system is failing indigent clients and possibly taxpayers.
It found that the attorney qualification standards are too lenient, that training is inadequate, and that oversight is practically non-existent.
Allison B.A., director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Maine, summarized the report during Tuesday's hearing by the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services, which oversees the system. BA told the commission about a case the ACLU won earlier this year after it challenged a shoplifting conviction that could have stripped a woman's access to addiction treatment. BA says the woman's first attorney, rostered by the Indigent Legal Services Commission, had previously been suspended from practicing law for incompetence, and he was later reprimanded by the Board of Bar Overseers for conduct unworthy of an attorney.
In other words, this commission continued to hire a lawyer who had been sanctioned by the bar overseers 3 times, including a suspension.
The Sixth Amendment report also scrutinized the billings by the private attorneys rostered by the commission, and it prompted an investigation by Pine Tree Watch, a nonprofit news service that homed in on an explosion in the legal services budget from roughly $10 million in 2011 to more than $21 million last year, and potentially $2.2 million in overbilling by private attorneys. Pine Tree Watch also examined billings by Fairfield and Associates, a law firm that charged the commission $1.5 million last year, which prompted an investigation by the commission's director. On Tuesday, attorney Amy Fairfield defended her firm's work and invited the commission to examine its billings.
I want to make it very clear that I will open my books, I will open my doors, I will do whatever anybody feels they need to see or do with regard to how our office runs.
Vouching for Fairfield's firm was one of its biggest clients, Anthony Sanborn.
I don't think any money is ever wasted on defending somebody, especially if they are innocent.
Sanborn was convicted in 1993 for murdering his girlfriend Jessica Briggs, but attorney Fairfield reached a deal 2 years ago that ended his 70-year sentence. It was Fairfield's first post-conviction review, and she billed the Indigent Legal Services Commission more than 2,000 hours. Those billings highlighted gaps in the commission's oversight, although the subsequent review by the commission director drew no sanctions. But Fairfield says the scrutiny reveals a fundamental obstacle in providing free defense to the poor, public perceptions of criminal defendants.
Certainly, we've never been a particularly sympathetic group, and unfortunately, our clients aren't either.
Numerous studies of indigent defense programs around the country have found a litany of problems, from underfunded public defender offices to court-appointed attorneys who are swamped with hundreds of felony cases in a single year. And according to Jamesa Drake, president of the Maine Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, attorneys rostered by the Maine Indigent Legal Services Commission often get a bad reputation.
Rostered attorneys are often maligned as grifters who are looking to take advantage of the system.
Such arguments seem to resonate with Commissioner Ronald Schneider, an attorney at Bernstein & Schur, who told Anthony Sanborn that his recent release from the Maine State Prison was because his court-appointed attorney worked hard to exonerate him.
And I think what's particularly unfortunate is that you received extremely high-quality, diligent defense that cost a lot of money, but not nearly as much as it would cost if you hired me, because I charge a whole lot more than $60 an hour.
The costs of providing indigent legal defense are likely to stay under the microscope as the Commission eyes changes to the current system. Some are advocating for Maine to adopt a public defender system, although previous proposals in recent years have failed to gain traction in the legislature because of concerns over costs and pushback from defense attorneys. But the threat of a lawsuit alleging that Maine's current system is inadequate looms, was floated during testimony by the ACLU on Tuesday, and that means that the Indigent Legal Services Commission is already contemplating changes in billing practices, the oversight of rostered attorneys, changes that could come as soon as next year. For Maine Public Radio News, I'm Steve Missler.
Morning edition on Maine Public Radio. Good morning. I'm Erwin Gratz at 8:30 before 9 o'clock. Outside today, a lot of clouds, some rain showers in the south, maybe some snow showers in the north today. High temperatures staying in the 30s. Overnight tonight, the precipitation will wind down. Skies begin to clear. Tomorrow, we should get some sunshine, highs in the 30s and 40s, but more inclement weather moving in for Friday.
Today marks another day of public hearings in the House impeachment inquiry. One of the president's staunchest defenders, Republican Congressman Jim Jordan.
But I think he really is seen not as much a policy person as a very articulate and passionate spokesperson.
An in-depth profile of Jim Jordan this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
And we'll join All Things Considered this afternoon at 4 o'clock. We'll begin coverage of the impeachment inquiry hearings this morning at 9, but break away at 4 for All Things Considered. If you'd like to watch more of the hearings or see them in their entirety, we'll have it at mainpublic.org and also on Maine Public Television and Maine Public Television's World Channel.
Morning Edition is made possible by your support along with Evergreen Subaru, announcing its Share the Love hometown charity, Sandcastle Clinical and Educational Services. EvergreenSubaru.com. By the Dexter Group of Alex Brown, investment advisory and asset management services since 1995. In Portland and at the DexterGroup.us. And by Maine General Health, a comprehensive system for all your healthcare needs. Learn more at maingeneral.org.
A marathon is a little over 26 miles. Imagine running more than a marathon every single day for 4 months. I officially ran across Australia, 2,210 miles, back roads, dirt roads, through the deserts, with bicycle support.
That is Katie Visco. Her day job is delivering homemade soup on her bicycle, but this summer she decided to run down the middle of Australia.
Katie ran between 28 and 38 miles every day, while her husband, Henley, biked alongside her with their supplies. A lot of the terrain is desert, right? They dealt with heat, exhaustion, and high desert winds. I could feel the wind emotionally because it's so strong in your face, right at you, and you can't do anything about it. It's literally like running through the most viscous sludge.
The going got rough, like really rough. In the sandiest stretch of desert, Henley had to push a supply bike for a few days. It weighed 350 pounds.
And so, with all of his might, he pushed, dragged, pulled this bike through 2 days of deep sand. There was a couple of moments where he stopped. A huge lesson from the trip is that if I'm in pain, like I have to run another 30 miles today and my foot hurts, whatever it is brief. Dragging yourself across the desert may not sound like fun, but Katie says she's kind of sad it's over. This run across Australia was ultimately a mission of self-discovery and self-love. I wanted to become somebody more than I thought I could be.
So, what is next for these two? Katie and her husband say they aren't sure yet, but they are already daydreaming about it.
Alexa, are you my new virtual doctor? From American Public Media, this is Marketplace Tech, demystifying the digital economy. I'm Molly Wood. Marketplace Tech is supported by Home Advisor, helping homeowners find the right pros for their home projects. Homeowners can read reviews, book appointments, and check cost guides for any project at homeadvisor.com. And by Acquia, the open-source digital experience company. At Acquia, they power websites, applications, and online experiences for some of the largest brands around the world. More at acquia.com. Health data is big business. Google, of course, just announced plans to buy Fitbit for more than $2 billion. Apple is positioning its devices as the portal for medical records. And Amazon is trying to do everything else. The company bought a couple healthcare startups that range from prescription drug distribution to telemedicine. It set up Haven, a consulting group that wants to bring down the cost of healthcare. Its Echo devices can sync with Fitbit for fitness and sleep data. And it's filed for patents on tech that would let Alexa detect when you're sick and recommend medicine. But do people want to give their medical data to Amazon? And if so, is it worth it? Joshua McNichols is co-host of a podcast about Amazon called Primed from KUOW in Seattle, and they looked into it.
We talked to a doctor who's looking at the Echo's ability to detect the rate of breathing based on sending out supersonic signals like a bat or a dolphin might. And they're using this in neonatal intensive care unit at the University of Washington to detect, how babies are breathing by setting an echo outside their crib, for example. We've also seen them training Alexa to recognize what's called agonal breathing, which is a kind of breathing associated with heart attacks, for example, so that they might be able to detect a heart attack before it's happening.
This raises the kind of obvious
5
question,
minutes
though,
left.
like how big a hurdle would
5
that
minutes
be for
left.
consumers to say, yeah, just be on all the time listening for me to have a heart attack and everything else?
Yeah, there is a really strong tension there between the Echo's potential use as a medical device and Amazon's desire to sort of lock it down so that it can't be vulnerable to being hacked, right? I mean, when you look at smartphones, an app can just take over all kinds of parts of the smartphone. Amazon makes it much harder to take over, the actual internal mechanics of the Echo. So at some point, Amazon's going to have to decide, do we want to open this device up so that it can serve consumers in this way that researchers are exploring? Or do we want to keep it locked down and maybe look at getting some of that personal health data from other sources, such as through wearables like the earbuds that they're developing or the glasses that they're developing?
What do you think the health landscape starts to look like as you get Amazon, Google, Apple, these fairly non-traditional sources of health-related information? Could it hamper Amazon's efforts if it can't control the entire ecosystem? Like, what do you think this competitive landscape starts to look like?
Amazon is at a bit of a disadvantage because you've got Google and Apple already have smartphones.
All right, so we're getting down to the last 3 minutes. I think this round give you a good indication of how this strategy can weather a storm. If you followed along without me explaining what I'm doing, maybe you've discovered the pattern. If you haven't, you're going to have to go back and watch it. I will tell you, this is the clue. When you see that, that is obviously a killer. Laterals kill, but we survived all of this. We were up $70, $75, 75% of the way to the goal of $100 win stop loss is what I call it. I stop when I hit 100 and I stop if I lose 100. Yesterday, without filming, of course, I go 4 in a row winning $100 sessions, and now that I record, of course, looks like we're almost back to even with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock. I don't know why things work that way. They just work that way. Whatever. At least before we move forward, you can see what I would say winning, losing strategy looks like, right? You can see what it's like to go up, so you know that you can make some money. If you had a lower win stop loss set, you would have got out maybe at $50 profit, then this would be a successful session. We're still hovering around even. I'm very curious to see how this ends. 1 minute, 30 seconds. I'm going to play another round right after this. I guess I'm glad that we saw this session instead of walking out right off the bat with a $100 win. Get you excited that this is just the new holy grail. You can see that it's not all peaches. 58 seconds. Interesting. That was interesting, wasn't it? 30 seconds left, and we've stalled here. I don't know why. If it ends on this note, then, we're $41 up. That's a 30-minute session. Remember, in real life, that would work out to be an hour's worth of play. So you'd have to ask yourself, is making $40 an hour worth it? I would say, for me, definitely. I've got no problem. Basically, for me, as long as I'm winning and not losing, I'm fine. So, anyway, apparently I'm at the Bovada website now. I'm not going to blame it on them. I don't know if suddenly I've lost internet up here in Maine. Sometimes when the weather is acting up, we can lose internet. So it could be that happened. I don't like to see that happen. It makes me nervous at what would happen in live play if it locked up like that. But anyway, I wanted to play a real gaming software from a real online casino. This is the Practice Baccarat software that's used also by Ignition. So I opened up this morning with Bovada.lv. Now I'm going to switch over to ignition.eu and we'll see how we fare. So right now, just call it up $40 for this session, and I'll see you guys soon.